and I'm checking to see if it has the potential to reduce oxidation. The main things that happen is happening to everybody, two things: oxidation and inflammation. And those two things are linked to every single health disease, right? So if we can reduce that, we can't necessarily slow down the aging, but if we can reduce it, that's fantastic. And so I want a water that doesn't age me, that doesn't take away the healthy electrons, that doesn't create more sickness and dis-ease in the body. I want something that has an antioxidant. These are your fruits, your vegetables, your vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E. Those things, because they're living, they have an electrical charge to them, right? And they're full of antioxidants. So the water that I want to drink, I desire it to have that.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Abundance on Tap. This is the official podcast of the Appalachian Water Collective. I'm your co-host, Alex Corey. Ashley DeMarco is spending some quality time with her family today. We are in end of summer, early fall, peak glorious weather in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Western North Carolina, where we're based out of. And our guest today is someone very special that Ashley has met in person. I've not had the pleasure to in Las Vegas during our large water conferences that our company hosts. I will meet him probably next year in Okinawa, Japan. This is LaPrentiss Demond. LaPrentiss is a wealth of knowledge in the water community. It's me and him usually answering questions all day about random things about water certification, all of the nitty-gritty things of water that you don't ever really want to think about or have to consider or really want to learn when you're just thinking about being healthier. LaPrentiss and I, mostly LaPrentiss, got that. So he is just the resource master, organized everything. Great for the plumbing aspect of things that no one really wants to think about when they think of water. So he takes away all of that unnecessary activation energy and has plenty of videos about exactly what to look for, what we value when it comes to healthy water, when it comes to the specific tests that we do. Maybe your favorite brand is listed in this video. It's just comprehensive, and if you want a good place to start with water, this is a great overview. Enjoy this interview with LaPrentiss Demond. Could you give a little bit of background for you're in the service, right?
Yep, I'm in the Air Force.
Not many people I find in the water world are also in the service, and I don't know why that is. So what brought you to the service, and then how did you find the water? These are very disconcerting things.
They are very different things, but they do come up together. So ultimately, I joined the Air Force for numerous reasons, and this is like my Air Force story, right? Mm-hmm. So the first one is I wanted to get away from the rules with my sister and my brother-in-law. I grew up, I lost my mom when I was 7, and so they raised me, and I just didn't like their rules. I didn't like the way I felt. I felt like an outsider all the time. And so I figured, you know what? If I just join the military, I don't have to follow any rules. I can go travel. And it was really smart thinking at the time, right? So the second thing, though, is that I definitely wanted to travel. I was in Southern California at the time, and I wanted to see the ladies that were all in the area. I wanted to visit Japan. I wanted to visit the Philippines. I wanted to see the world. And then the third thing is I was told that there was a Popeyes chicken on every Air Force base. So my recruiter lied to me. There is not a Popeyes. The base I'm at now, I'm in Northern California. There is no Popeyes there on the base. Like I have to drive off and go a far distance. But yeah, that's how I joined the military. And almost didn't make it, simply because at week 5, it was a long time ago. So back then, the basic training was different. But at week 5, they pulled me away to say, "Hey, Training Sampson, we're going to send you back home. You have this thing known as sickle cell. And because of that, we can't have you in the military." Now, I didn't know what that was. So I was like, I don't get it. I passed the test fine, the physical test. I passed the mental test. I did all these things, about to go to Warrior Week. And they're telling me that I have to go back. Now, if they would told me this day 1, I would have left. I would not be in the Air Force. But they told me this week 4. So this is like, hey, you did all of this work and you're telling me I'm stopping now? No, that's not happening. We're going to find a way. So I ended up going to a training squadron where they kind of let people hang out in limbo until they're about to leave. And then I got to I sent letters to my congressman, and eventually I got to talk to medical, and they said, hey, we'll let you stay in if you sign this waiver. This waiver says that if anything happens to you, actually, the first thing it said was you're not allowed doing high altitude activities. So I can't be a pilot, can't jump out of a parachute, nothing high altitude. The second thing was if anything happens to you and it's related to your sickle cell, the military is not liable. I was like, okay, I'll sign that because I never experienced anything. I was like, what are you talking about? Run fine, all that stuff is good. So I signed the waiver, joined with a class I didn't even know, but I was just happy I graduated, right?
Yep.
And I kind of forgot. After I graduated, I went to tech school, got to my first base, and I kind of forgot that I had this sickle cell thing. And I started doing what everybody else does, right? So I started partying, started drinking, and then different things were happening, right? So my skin was breaking out. It was peeling, cracking, and bleeding. So I would wear, like right now I don't wear it, right? but I wear long sleeve everything. I always wear pants because we're guys, we have egos. We don't go to a doctor for anything if something's wrong with us, right? So yeah, I just did that for like all my 20s until my 30s. 30s, I started slowing down a little bit. And pretty much I was like, man, I need to get in shape again. Oh yeah, I have the sickle cell. I forgot all about that. I need to start drinking good water. So I started with a Brita filter. And then ended up from there going to Crystal Geyser because I heard that was all natural. It was all good for you. And by that time, I'm working out again. I'm doing 5Ks every other day and drinking a gallon of Crystal Geyser. Like my guys would tell you that I'm coming in to work and I'm just chugging this Crystal Geyser. And in November of 2020, I believe. Yep. Around 2019 of November, I ended up getting plantar fasciitis.
I've had that.
Yep. So for those of you who don't know, that's inflammation in your feet. And I was like, all right, what's going on? I went to the doctor, the military doctor on base, and he was like, hey, yep, you have plantar fasciitis. It's going to be 3 months before you get inserts because we don't have any here. We got to get them custom made. There's a backlog. And I was like, so you're telling me I can't work out? I can't run? I can't do the things I've gotten comfortable with for 3 months? He's like, yep. And the average military person, they pride themselves on being on a profile because that means they don't have to work out. They can kick back, they eat donuts all the time. That's not me. Like I just started getting my life in order. And so I wanted to be able to run. It felt good being able to run a 5K with no issues. And now you're telling me I got plantar fasciitis. So from there, I just go on social media and there's friends I'm chatting with who are doing all kinds of things, right? And then I just run across someone. They said, hey, have you ever considered the quality of the water that you're drinking? What? Have you ever considered the quality of the water that you're drinking? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I got my Crystal Geyser right here. I have like a little bit and I share that like I'm drinking a gallon of Crystal Geyser. I know I'm drinking the good stuff. And as I finish it off, I notice that my mouth is still dry. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me see what this is about. So he sends me a presentation. A good friend of mine known as David sends me this presentation. I'm like, all right, you know what? This sounds like something I need. Let me go ahead and try it. And then I'll let you know if I want to get it, right? He's like, well, yeah, come on over. I'm like, where are you at? He tells me he's in Texas. And I'm in Northern California. So I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work, right? So I do a search trying to find out in the area who has this water. And luckily, after a week, there's a lady who says, hey, I have this water. You could try it out. And I had to let her know that, hey, I'm not a creep. I'm just a guy who wants to try this water, right? And she is 3 hours away and she decides to want to meet up at a Starbucks. So we meet at the halfway point and we meet at the Starbucks and she tells me to bring my water. So at the time, I was drinking Nestle Pure Life. Actually, I think I had my Crystal Geyser, but my girlfriend was drinking Nestle Pure Life, so I brought them both. Drove an hour and a half, met at the Starbucks, and she gave me the presentation.
Yeah.
Right. So she tests the water, and I'm like excited, and I'm showing pictures to my girlfriend saying, "Look, our water is acidic. This stuff is horrible for us." And so I got to see the magic. I was blown away. And then last but not least, she blessed me with 9 gallons of water. 3 of the 8.5,
Wow.
3 of the 9, and then 3 of the 9.5. I took that back home. I don't know which one I went to first. I'm pretty sure I did the 9.5 first. I think
of course
so.
You did.
And a couple of things started to happen. After about probably, I think it was like 4 days, my skin stopped bleeding. Because remember, my skin was peeling, cracking, and bleeding. So that was happening. And after about a week, the symptoms of my plantar fasciitis went away. And I didn't change anything to my diet, but the water I was drinking. And if you're curious on my diet, it's chicken and vegetables. That's easy. And then on the weekends, I would eat whatever, right? But Monday through Friday, it was chicken and vegetables. And then once that happened, I was like, crap, I got to get this, and I want to share it with everybody. At that time, I also made rank. Found out that there was a business behind it. I'm like, all right, now I started seeing the vision of how I was going to do this. That's ultimately how I stumbled across that and joined the Air Force.
Wow. 4 days is so fast. And I think it's mostly the people with those extreme conditions where there's some semi almost debilitating, but like in your face, massive inflammatory condition, right? Plantar fasciitis, if people, hopefully no one has to experience that. But on the extreme point, it feels like someone's just shoving a dagger into your heel. Like I ran high school cross country for 8 years. And the last 2 years of it were basically just dagger in heel. It's miserable. Like it makes walking and running awful and just sucks the joy out of it. And then it straight up stopped your bleeding.
Yeah, like my skin started to heal itself.
Wow. Okay.
So like my skin it was from the chlorine in our shower. Like at least the chlorine, that's it, the part that I know. Because when I ran the water in my apartments, the smell of the chlorine was so strong, it was literally burning my skin. And then just switching water, and then I found out about the showering unit. I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely gotta get this. My skin stopped bleeding. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. That's a dramatic change. So did that improve? What else improved other than the physical symptoms? Like, did your perspective change after that, or did anything else shift after, like, okay, wait a minute, this was from water? Like, what the, like, did anything else start moving in your mind?
I was blown away for the most part as far as what was going on in my mind. I feel like I had clearer thinking. But other physical things started happening the more once I actually got the device. One of the things in Northern California is a lot of people have allergies up here. But my allergies were gone. I was able to I'm able to see my abs a bit more, right? Because I started losing a little bit of that stubborn fat that we have challenges getting rid of. And then I really started looking more into what I eat, and I started changing up some of those things too. I noticed that dairy wasn't the best for me, so got away from the milk, which was actually a good thing because I was using chocolate milk as a post-recovery. So once this water started doing the trick, I was like, oh, I don't need the milk anymore. So that was the only reason why I was drinking. I can't remember the brand anymore. I want to say it's not like a generic chocolate milk. It's like a Fairlife. That was the name of the milk. So that was the only reason why I was drinking it, was to recover from my workouts, from my runs and all that stuff. But once I got this water in me and that lactic acid dissipated, I didn't need the chocolate milk anymore.
How long until you felt that? Like how? So that was still on the borrowed water. That was on the gifted water, or
no,
that was
no. So I went through the 9 gallons, and then I was like, all right, I gotta get this. So the 9 gallons, the main things I noticed was that my skin stopped bleeding, and then that my plantar fasciitis was gone. And I had to wait to get the machine. So I would drive, because there was a place that had the water to buy, like to buy like almost like a subscription service. Yeah, fill up place. So I would literally go there and I made drives to constantly get water until I was able to get my machine.
Yeah, dedicated. I mean, if you have dramatic improvements in your quality of life, I mean, that's a lot like going to the pharmacy to get something that is a painkiller, except it's actually helping you recover with no side effects. So I would drive too.
Yeah, I was hooked. I need the fix, right?
What did you notice for recovery from your workouts after you started consistently having the hydrogen rich water?
So for me, the main thing I just noticed was that I don't, yes, I could still stretch, but the lactic acid, like that burning sensation, wasn't there the next day. So that's a part that I really enjoy because it lets me like have an airman. Like I've been in the military now 21 years.
Wow.
When I got it, I was around the 18 mark, 18, 19 years, but I have more energy than my airmen. So like I'm kicking their butt and kickball. They're like, how's he have that energy? And once I start sharing the water, they're like, it's that water he's on. It's that water.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like cheating. It really is.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, it's indispensable for gyms in general, or just the people who notice it the most are the people who are active, because it just makes your metabolism more efficient, which makes your recovery faster, which gives you a little more cleaner, stable energy. So if you're active in general, it has the dramatic effects that you listed first of helping your body heal itself quickly. So it brings you back to baseline. And then if you keep doing it, then you just notice the improvements, right? Not just the back to like a normal fundamental before. You're no longer in the like disease or ailment stage. If it brings you back to zero to baseline, then you start seeing all the like enormous positive benefit.
Right, exactly.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know any of that. That's powerful. I haven't heard a story quite as quick and as drastic as that. We've heard some stories of a lot of cancer, which is pretty powerful, but something as visceral as like my skin is bleeding, like that is so impactful. Wow. Okay. And so what did you think whenever you found the business? Like, what was the progression towards, okay, this is pretty powerful information to help the body heal? How did you then find the business behind it?
Well, I first got the device because I wanted to get it. So I got the Kangen 8, then I got the Anespa. And then so David was really, he's like, you got to do the business. You got to do the business. But I didn't start right away with the business. And the reason why is just simply because I wanted to learn more about the device.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I knew how it worked. I want to make sure I understood it, because if I'm going to actually share this, and I want to make sure it wasn't just a placebo effect.
Right.
I wanted other people to experience this. And I was more, for me at the time, I was really hooked more on people getting this to improve their health. I wasn't necessarily worried about trying to make a ton of money, or any of that kind of stuff. So my focus for the first year or two was knowing what I have, like the potential of what I have here, and being able to serve people and get them water. So as that continued, different things started to happen that made me consider the business. So for one, I was constantly giving out water. Like I love giving out water and love helping people, and I got a ton of stories from that.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that ended up happening though was I didn't have any personal time. Right after work, and actually during work while in the military, people are texting me, like, hey, let's set up a time so we can do a water swap, or hey, swing by so you can show me a demo. So I didn't have any time.
Right.
I had no time. And so right after work, I was driving up and down, sometimes 4 hours. I've driven 4 to 6 hours to do a water demo to show people stuff. And it ends up being, I was like, man, I am running ragged. I think I understand what they mean by the business now. Right. Trading your time for money and all that stuff. So I essentially had a second job. I mean, I loved it, but it was driving me crazy.
That's a lot of value that was just flowing out of you. Yeah, probably with not an equal amount of reciprocation. It wasn't probably coming back to you in that same quantity. Yeah. You start understanding why there is the business behind it whenever you're just pumping out so much value. And I mean, the core of it really is just helping people. Like if you see such a dramatic improvement in any aspect of your life, literally just by changing water, right? No one had to like, this isn't a cocktail series of even vitamins or something. It's just by changing your water. Molecular hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant I still know of, other than there's some interesting like bioelectric photon therapy that's close for the mitochondrial stuff for the metabolism and the recovery, but without having to change anything, habit, lifestyle about your life, just by changing your water, it's pretty overwhelming, the effects it has on most people.
Yeah. So what ended up happening, a couple of other things that kind of pushed me towards the business. In the beginning, I had a fear. That's another thing that stopped me from being military. You're not, it's taboo to sell a business to your airmen beneath you, right? So that was a challenge. I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this business, right? But the other thing was I had a fear of what if the business fails? What if I do this right? Or what if I don't do things right? And this fear kind of consumes people. Before they even get started, they're consumed by this fear of failing, right? But over time of sharing the water and all that type of stuff, the confidence grew. And people were naturally asking me, they're like, hey, is there a business to this? And I'm like, oh, I got to talk about the business part, right? And I didn't know much about it. And so I would have to refer to other people. But the other thing that happened was I was forced to have to learn how to share without giving water, right? So I ended up getting tasked to deploy. And at the time where I was helping at least 4 to 5 people a month, I had to stop all of that because I had to literally go deploy. So the question comes up, how do you find a way to serve people, one, without them trying the product, and two, while you're a long distance or like anywhere around the globe, right? So I had to learn. I learned how to take my demonstration, turn it online, and I learned how to create a little bit of a funnel. So that way, even while I was deployed, which blew me away, I had people who believed in me, trusted me and what I was doing, my passion, and then they were buying the water machine. So that showed me that yes, it can be done. Yes, I can do the business. Yes, I don't have to go around giving water all the time. I love doing that part, but if I'm busy because I'm tied away or whether I'm deployed or what, I could serve people without physically having to go do it all the time. So that opened up my eyes and that helped me. That broke a lot of the fear and barriers I had.
Wow. Yeah. What was there a progression that you noticed with sort of like step 1, step 2? What were the incremental jumps in? Like I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I first started because I didn't know. I'm the same type of, I have a very engineering brain. So I need to know exactly like how things work so that I can describe them when people ask. So my only way of having my fear center calm down is just by repetition, basically. Was there like a natural progression that you noticed for those itchy parts of your mind to calm down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say in the very beginning was me just learning the product for itself. So I watched a lot of videos from a lot of other people who have shared the product and knew everything about the product. So I had to learn that. And then the upline I was working with, David, he ended up stopping. Like he stopped the business, started to go do something completely different, solar. And so I was kind of on my own. And so I would meet up with other people who have been doing this for a while and learn from them. I was constantly in circles and just learning from other people who were doing the health side and trying to learn how that worked first, right? And then the first step for me was just giving water to other people. And finding those presentations that others were doing. So I was like, hey, check out this water. And then when people would ask questions, at first I would tell them what it was, and then it would get me in trouble. They would like immediately go on Google. They're like, oh, no, this is a scam. I'm good. I'm good. Right? Despite what they were feeling, they would still do that. So I had to switch it up, and I had to look at the person and what challenges they were going through, right? So it wasn't just me necessarily just pushing water on them. It was me learning how to solve a problem.
Yeah.
From there, I want to say I found someone who taught how to do a proper demonstration. And I ended up, once I saw how one person did it, I actually researched and I found out how 20 other people did it. And I did that to make sure that I can teach someone this in a way that I understand.
Yeah.
Right. So I found someone who taught it very scientifically. I saw someone who did it like literally like just on a train or a subway. Right. So I saw all these different variations. I took the bits and pieces that match how I wanted to present. And then I started doing that for people. So after giving the water, I invite people to my place. They would see the presentation and they'd be blown away. My presentations were probably 3 hours long, 2 to 3 hours long.
Wow.
It doesn't feel that way.
Right.
So, but the first few times I did it myself, like I did everything. But then I learned this trick is to have them do the presentation.
Yeah.
So they come by, I have them bring their water, I have them bring extra little things to entice commitment, right? And then I would give them the tools to test the water so they could see that their water is not good. I've discovered that if it's me telling them, they don't believe it, right? But if they believe it, if they do it themselves and they're telling themselves that, then it's the truth. So my goal, I know the presentation, let's get them to do it, right? And then the way that demonstration, just to back up a little bit, I practiced online. So I had a Facebook page, just my name. I had no one on it. And I practiced. I set up the camera, I practiced doing it, and I would watch how I did it and then constantly improve. And I would do a different water every day. And then once I was ready, I started inviting people. So people would start watching online. And by then I felt confident, I felt comfortable from the in-persons and the online ones. And then from there, I felt like I kept talking to the same people on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I need to get a new audience, right? Or how do I get people who are fresh eyes every day? So I started sharing on YouTube. And then I was like, all right, cool. So then I had a formula, had a strategy. And then from there, that built the confidence for me to want to help others learn how to do the same.
Yeah.
So if there was a formula, I would say that is it. I made it sound easy, but it wasn't easy.
Yeah. What are the main things, just to give people some level of clarity with, what are we looking at? What are you examining and what are you showing in the presentations? Like, are we doing contaminant level? Are we doing, like, what aspects of water do you look at? Do you care about?
So now, what I do now is very different than what I did back then. So for one, I got to know the person and why they're drinking water, or if they're drinking water, right? So if they're drinking bottled water, I'm curious on why they chose that water, how long they've been drinking it, have they considered anything else, right? And then if they are not an athlete, if there's someone who has this personality of care, right? So they're normally, when you ask them what they're passionate about, they say, oh my gosh, I care about Susie. Susie has been going through all these challenges and stuff. Then the approach I take is around a care aspect. Hey, I know you care about these people and you want to be able to help them out more. So I'm just curious, have you ever considered the water that you're drinking as a way of being able to be more available to provide more care for that person or that situation or that event, right? So that's how I used to do it before. What I do now is different because I know about two components. One is filtration and one is ionization. So I need to know where they sit first. If they already have a filter, I'm curious on what they have, what kind of filter they have and what made them choose it, right? I got to know their why. So based on that, what kind of filter they have, I want to show them what their filter can do. Despite what they may believe, I want to show them, right? So for me, the very first step is I see what kind of water they're on, right? So if they're on bottled, I normally have a demo of the bottle of water that they're on, right?
Yeah.
Next step is to see what they want to do about it. If they want to see a presentation, I'll show them that. But the next step is to get them at least on filtered water, right?
Yep.
So in order to get them on that filtered water, the first thing is you need to know what's in your water now. You need to know what's in your tap water now, because that's already causing you harm. And you may not, you're like, oh, I don't drink tap water. I don't drink that at all. I drink bottled. Well, what do you bathe in? When you make soups and noodles, are you doing Dasani noodles, Dasani soup? Are you doing Nestle noodles? I'm pretty sure you're not. Pretty sure you're using tap water, right?
Oh yeah.
So I show people ewg.org/tap water. I have them look in the database and see what's in their water. Something I highly recommend everyone do, because we're consuming that water even when we're in the shower, right? So I show them that, and then based on their filter that they have, if they have a filter already, I say, all right, cool, let's see what it removes. And it's not exactly what's on that filter company's website. Right. So any filter company can put on their website, hey, here's all the stuff we remove. We remove 99% of everything. I want to make sure that it's tested by a third party, right? Because I want a third party that can be trusted, that has nothing to do with trying to make a profit from that filter company, right? So what I do is I send them, once I have them do this, and I have them go to NSF website and see what their filter removes. And you can look it up by the company.
Right.
And guess what? If your company's not there, they aren't removing it. Right. They aren't truly NSF certified to remove it. So I ensure that my clients get a filter that's NSF certified. That's the leader in certification that all these filter companies pride themselves on. And that is not coming from a website, just from the website lab tests, because other companies will do third-party testing, and I can't trust that. In fact, when you look at it, if you actually look at the test that they did, normally it's with a distilled water, and they normally do like 10 gallons.
Yep.
5 gallons. And your filter is supposed to last 30 or 40. They don't even test the full thing. And they're like, oh yeah, we tested for 2 gallons and yeah, 99% everything gone.
Right.
No. You want a certification from a filter company that is going to test it to its breaking point.
Right.
And then back it off for your safety. And that's what NSF does. Right. So from there, people are like, all right, cool. I get it now.
Yeah, we like taking the trust out of it. That's how I like to talk to people. It's like, if you don't know who to trust, right? There's 23,000 plus filtration companies in the US. And if you don't, most people don't want to have to trust someone. It's just remove their trust entirely. Water is something where you can just have it tested. Like we have all of these consumer sent-in samples, the largest database that exists, which talking about. So if anyone wants to look up what they are currently using for a filter, like you mentioned, it's nsf.org. And in the top right, you'll see a search product database button. Just type in the exact name, less can be more here, of the company. Like sometimes the company is listed differently than you think the product is. Like Brita wouldn't be like, the full company name is something weird. So just type Brita and it'll pop up. And then you can see the specific product and the only things they're allowed to claim. Right? Like you said, there's going to be sometimes there's a huge discrepancy in what they claim with all those 99.99%, which they're just throwing up there. And then NSF will be like, no, we tested that at like 70%. And that tapped out at 20 gallons, right? You can see exactly what it was tested for. And it's kind of disheartening because you learn that most companies just are not all that forthcoming with what their tests are.
Exactly. There's a company right now, oh my gosh, where you just drop a pod into the water and they say that it magnetically pulls everything to the pod and that removes stuff. And when you actually look at the NSF, they're like, yeah, we're NSF certified, we remove all this stuff. But when you look up their NSF, the NSF says that the materials in the pod meets NSF standards. So I was like, what does that mean? So I emailed, you can email NSF as well and say, hey, I noticed that you guys put this as the answer. What does that mean? And what they said was, that means that this material does not leach anything into the water,
right,
but is not certified to actually remove anything.
Yeah. that's the other side of it, right? Is people will say NSF certified because they know that smart consumers are looking for that. And then you'll go be like, okay, exactly what NSF? And they'll be like, the numbers that they list are like for for material certification. Like this is good manufactured quality material that's not degrading or leaching, has nothing to do with what it's removing from the water. It's so annoying to have to go, like when people are just looking and getting blasted with marketing all the time, when you start looking for water stuff, it can be so frustrating because I get these ads every day now, especially since when I get blasted with all the new water companies, and I will just be like, what NSF standards you guys have? And they'll be like, this one. And be like, no, you don't. I just checked. And they're like, and then they won't respond. So they
Yeah,
know, they just don't bother because almost no one will probably check them on it. Right. It's
I
kind of
post a
like,
picture. I
yeah,
posted in the chat. So when they do their ad, I'm like, hey, y'all, just let y'all know this is not NSF certified. And I'll like, here, look, you can look it up yourself.
yep. Yeah, it's hard to debate with that. There's no back and forth. It's you either are or you aren't. That's why we like the third party. Yeah. And they do have to pay for that. But if you're a national water filtration company, it's not prohibitively expensive, especially if you're claiming it. Not going to break your business. Yeah. Interesting.
Exactly.
What do you see as the like biggest concerns for health for people in regards to filtration?
Man, a lot of people are the biggest concerns. A lot of people have concerns about what's in their water, so they're stuck on fluoride. A lot of people are stuck on
Yeah.
fluoride, which a lot of people don't know. There's actually good fluoride. There is bad fluoride that can be added to water, but there's actually natural forms of fluoride. So showing people what's actually in their tap water, because they just assume fluoride's automatically in there. A lot of times people don't have that in there, right? The other, probably the big thing is just cancer causing agents that people weren't tracking, but they've heard something. And then once we show them what's in their water, like, oh my gosh. And then they bring some story about how family relative, someone ended up having something. And then this kind of puts them in a shock and kind of gets them to really take action like immediately, which is good that we're catching it now. I just wish we could have caught it sooner. Those are the main things. A lot of times, some people I get and they tell me their water is brown that comes out of their tap. But besides, I would say those are probably the big things.
When you see something like if anyone wants to go look at their tap water report, ewg.org/tapwater, put in your zip code, there are some numbers on there that are obnoxiously high. There's some like close to 1,000x. There was one in I think it was San Diego. I looked up just for giggles, and it's just straight uranium. You're like, what was it? 97x the allowable limit of uranium. And the nice part that EWG does that the EPA doesn't. EPA has their own standards for what level of contaminant will make you sick, which are usually way too high, like the allowable limit. So EWG is like, okay, these are all very carcinogenic, and they just like knock the allowable limit down to a little more reasonable. Like you really don't want to constantly be poisoning yourself with uranium, or in Asheville where I am, we have radium in the water, and there's a movie about it, Radium Girls, right? So all of those are extremely toxic, and that's not even a poison introduced in the water. That's just coming off the rocks here. So it's the kind of the appeal to nature thing is we have a lot of spring water drinkers here in Western North Carolina, and I would love for the springs to be clean. But if you know there's radium in it, that's not help. Even if it's natural, it's not helpful. Like it's still a radioactive isotope. Anyway, yeah.
There's plenty of people that I've tested. That love our natural springs up north, and I've done the tests and showed them, I'm like, hey, this water is actually worse than your tap water somehow. Yeah. And it surprised people. PFASs and is taking a huge leap right now.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of awareness is coming up from that, just because it's that forever chemical that we weren't really tracking, but we use in everything.
Yeah.
And it's slowly creating a lot of damage in the body. And then the other one is microplastics.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are curious about that as well. And then they see that our filtration removes those things, which they absolutely love.
And that's a big jump for, I mean, I stopped doing plastic bottled water a while ago, but I can still see the frustration. And if you find out tap water is bad and you're like, okay, cool, I'll just buy a bottle of water, and you're buying like Nestle Pure Life or just anything in like a crunchy single-use plastic, and you're not thinking about the container. But if you see that outside a gas station in the sun or just in a warehouse under UV lights, like plastic doesn't last that long, and water is a great solvent. So like plastic, regardless of what it is, like the hard BPA free stuff will not degrade as quickly, but water will pull leach almost everything other than glass and stainless steel or just metal in general. But that's concerning. And microplastic they found in, I think it was like 93% of bottled water around the world. Just everything leaches. So I always have my obnoxiously blue bottle with me. So I'm like stainless steel Hydro Flask type thing, just as good. It depends how nerdy you want to be. But yeah, PFAS, forever chemicals. I have a hard time with the pesticides and herbicides because I am in the farming business as well. And I have a lot of people in Texas. And that's where atrazine was first dumped and discovered. And all of the pesticides and herbicides, most of the compounds that we run into are endocrine disruptors. So they mess with your hormones because they're close enough chemically where they plug into receptors, or they will just change the forms of your natural hormones. So people's energy levels and reproductive systems are just going like male fertility has been plummeting for 10 plus years. It doesn't look good. And a lot of that is just everything is an endocrine disruptor. Microplastic, PFAS, pesticides, herbicides. Hormones are very touchy things and they run your body. So those are the signals, right? So yeah, I appreciate you bringing up PFAS. And those are just Teflon. If anyone's using, that's an easy one to get rid of. If you have a Teflon pan, if you love your nonstick pan, you can just do like a ceramic pan. There's other techs that are non-sticky, not as sticky, that aren't Teflon byproducts. And DuPont is here in North Carolina. They were one of the ones that invented C8 and PFAS. They just dump it. They're allowed to legally because they won a court battle and it was on the specific contaminant of C8, and they still dump it in the rivers in North Carolina. So downstream, before it hits the ocean in Wilmington, North Carolina, we're starting a partner water co-op, Wilmington Water Co-op. We have someone spearheading it there because the Wilmington watershed is awful. Like we did a festival there and we pulled the water port and it was like 1,000x. Some things. Yeah, East Coast is rough. Like we were in Sarasota, Florida, and it was 997x arsenic. Like everyone knows arsenic. It's not even a weird new one. There's movies about it. Arsenic and Old Lace. Like it's straight up poison. But everyone thankfully for the most part knew, but they were doing bottled water. And you're like, your bottled water is just someone else's tap water run through a basic filter. Like there's no NSF certifications on the bottled water.
No, they don't have time. There's too many of them popping up. Like
right.
On my YouTube channel, people are constantly, hey, can you test this water? I personally don't have the time to test every water because there's so many of them coming up because it's not really regulated. As long as it's at the same level as tap water, then they aren't asking any questions. They don't really jump in until people get sick.
Yeah. And a lot of people get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. And then the other thing about bottled water is it's standardized. So one of the things is they standardize the process. So they heat the water, and I'm trying to think of the word right now. I'm drawing a blank. But sterilize. Yeah, they sterilize all the water to be the same. And when they put it in there hot, and you're worried about if your water's been out in the sun, it's already done that.
Right.
It's been sitting in the plastic the whole time. The moment they sterilize the water, because they got to remove the rocks and everything from it, right? They sterilize it to make it all taste the same. They dump it right into the bottle and they close the cap. So the water's already hot. It's already being oxidized. That scavenger. It's already taking up the plastic. So I mean, I guess you can keep it out of the sun so it doesn't have extra.
Yeah.
It's already
so
happening.
Whenever you do your tests, what are you testing? Like whenever you test a bottle, a brand of water, what are you testing for on your video?
So I am testing for three things. The first one I'm testing for is antioxidant potential, right? So with this, I'm using an ORP meter. The one I prefer so there's two versions. There's Milwaukee and then there is Pinpoint.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the two major brands. There's a ton of other ones that are out there, but I stick with Pinpoint. and I'm checking to see if it has the potential to reduce oxidation. The main things that happen is happening to everybody, two things: oxidation and inflammation. And those two things are linked to every single health disease, right? So if we can reduce that, we can't necessarily slow down the aging, but if we can reduce it, that's fantastic. And so I want a water that doesn't age me, that doesn't take away the healthy electrons, that doesn't create more sickness and dis-ease in the body. I want something that has an antioxidant. These are your fruits, your vegetables, your vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E. Those things, because they're living, they have an electrical charge to them, right? And they're full of antioxidants. So the water that I want to drink, I desire it to have that.
For if anyone wants to think about oxidation, just cut an apple in half or an avocado in half and leave it out in the air. That is oxidation in a nutshell. It's oxygen ripping electrons off things. And there are other oxidative things that act like that just pull up their big hungry atoms and they pull electrons off, but it is basically corrupting the natural form of something and literally just causing decay, right? Think rust. So that happens cellularly whenever we drink anything that's oxidizing. So that's positive ORP, like we just mentioned. Anything that is above 0 on the ORP scale is likely or has the potential to oxidize you. And that's almost all, actually, that is all bottled water that I've ever tested.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we kind of talked about the car rusting, all that type of stuff. And it makes a lot of sense. So the second thing I test for is alkalinity.
Yeah.
We know that sickness has a tough time of surviving in the alkaline environment. And for me, it's not necessarily, a lot of people say, oh, your stomach has to be acidic. Well, hold on. All right. So a couple of things. One, we're not talking about the alkalinity of your whole body. We're really working on your blood. Okay. Your blood must maintain that 7.365, and it's going to do that. The challenge, though, is it going to be taking it from the alkaline products you're consuming, or is it going to start taking it from you? Is it going to start taking it from your bones, your joints, your ligaments? Plantar fasciitis is inflammation. So any type of itis is inflammation happening in certain parts of the body. So plantar fasciitis is inflammation in the feet, bronchitis, inflammation in the lungs. And so we want to consume something that is alkaline, but we don't want it to be chemically changed.
Right.
pH stands for potential hydrogen. I'm telling you right now, a lot of bottled waters and stuff out there, there's not hydrogen in those. Then they're using sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda. They're using calcium chloride, which is another type of salt. They're using rock salts, the de-isoprods and things like that. That's what they're using to give it the 9 pH of water, but it's not actually the right alkalinity.
Yeah, and people will see, maybe if you start watching people in the water world, they'll do part of the test is just, it's gimmicky, but it is accurate, where if you open a bottle of something that's like pH 9.5 you buy from the store, and then you have the water that comes out of our ionizers, you can literally just blow into a straw, like carbon dioxide, right? So you're working on actively giving acidification and oxygen into it. So you're actually, and the ones that are chemically changed, you can watch the color of the pH drop. Like that is very rapidly changed, whereas ours is electrically changed and does not change with the addition. Yeah. So it's whether there is actual molecular hydrogen or concentration of OH molecule. So we're working at the actual hydrogen scale when we talk about ionization, opposed to kind of what people think and just like adding electrolytes in, right? Half the time when I talk about electrolyzed water, like when we go to a festival, that's what it is. People are like, oh, electrolytes. And I was like, nope, not quite. Yes, because it has minerals in it, right? Because our filter keeps minerals. So it has the electrolytes in it. But the term electrolyzed basically just means the water molecule split apart by running it through electricity, and literally the dissociation of water, H2O, that literally gets blown or vibrated apart. Think like mini lightning strike. There's enough energy there where it blows the molecule apart, and then it gets sorted from there. It's such a weird science.
Yeah, I agree. And so normally the story I tell is very similar to like anyone who's played pool.
Yeah.
Like when we start and break the game, that's what we're doing to the water. We're giving it that shock. And it happens in nature. So a lot of people are just like, oh my gosh, that's scientifically, that's not right. That you're making a science-made water. No, this happens anytime when water is at the bottom of a waterfall.
Yep.
It happens when lightning strikes a lake.
Yep.
It happens through that process. And so it's happening out in nature. We just can't get to it where we are. And there's places around the globe that have this water that is naturally alkaline.
Yeah, there was at least 7 when I first started looking at it. There was a good graphic, and it was where the scientists noticed that people were flocking to, and there are a lot of them had holy sites built over them because there was healing power there. And the most common one is Lourdes, France. I think they shut it down during COVID, but it was that was the easiest to get to.
Yeah, probably he was trying to swim in it.
Well, people were just flocking there, and Mecca has it. That's Zamzam water. So it's any water that comes up from a volcanic vent, because this was the other thing I didn't know and I learned. And most people are like, there is no new water. And you're like, there's new water literally all the time. It's called primary water. You can see it happen if you have access to, like, I don't know if you can see it in Yellowstone, but there are some places that you can literally see it coming up from a volcanic vent deep underground, and you can see the new water bubbling. So hydrogen and oxygen being smashed together by volcanic fissures and making it up throughout the stream. So that is new water. And then the opposing side is the dissociation of water, where it gets blown apart and then less molecules leave. It's such a weird thing to learn, because you're taught that the water cycle, it's kind of like energy. You're like, energy can't be created or destroyed. And they're like, water, it's all the same. And you're like, nope, this gets blown apart and renewed all of the time. So weird.
Yes, sir. And then that third thing that show is actually, some people like to call it different things. I like to call it superior hydration. And this is pretty much, I want to see the surface tension of the water. Yeah. That's a scientific way of looking at it, right? But the way I explain it to my audience is it's essentially the teabag test. I want to see if I give this water, if I pour this water, dump it, take this tea bag, and if I give it 4 to 5 dunks, if we're able to make tea, if the water is small enough to pass through that dehydrated tea bag to pull out the nutrients and actually make tea. There are a few waters that do that, but ultimately, I want the water that we're drinking. You should desire the water that you're drinking to pass all 3, not just 1, not just 2, but you want all 3. And so, yeah, there's been a few instances where I'm like, oh, wow. All right, cool. It does this one. Unfortunately, it's oxidizing. So that's great. That's smaller, but yeah, it's still oxidizing us. It's not really, it's not helping us, right? So those are the 3 things I look for when it comes to those water tests.
That's awesome. That's a great list. The diffusion one is very strange to watch, because usually we boil water, right, to make tea, and your brain kind of hurts. You're like, wait, why does that work? Why do we boil water to make tea? What happens to water when you heat it, right? The molecules spread out. Same thing happens when you do ionization, right? So this messes with the surface tension, and the molecules break apart and they can actually penetrate. It's just the basic fundamental things that we have always done. We're like, why do we do those things? So we're making water molecules spread apart, right? You don't actually have to do that. I mean, some people definitely want warm tea, but it's weird to know that's what's happening, right? And that's why people feel it hit so quickly, because it is just a different absorption process, penetration process.
Exactly. So if you're someone who is, I don't know, if you're working out, which is why this works great with athletes, if you're already taking creatine, all these supplements, using this water will help it be more bioavailable to the body.
Right.
If you're taking any type of supplements, if you're cooking, you don't need all that seasoning salt. You need just a little bit. You need a lot less. And this water is going to help bring out that flavor and help spread it to your food better. It's going to taste better and actually, save you in the long run.
Yeah, and it does mess with the actual cooking process, right? So we have a button specifically for cooking and for beverages, and that is messing with the surface tension. So a lot of the things that people do in tradition, like adding a pinch of salt, all of those things mess with the surface tension. So it affects how water behaves. It's just very strange. So we can manipulate that just in the everyday. And I think, like, I definitely take that for granted, because when I go over to someone's house and I was like, wait, oh, I have to remember what everyone else does because I don't have access to my technology. Yeah, I have to remember all of the, and there's nothing wrong with old traditional things like adding salt or just the common things. But whenever you have access to a tech that does it for you, definitely tend to let our brain just lax a little bit and have something else do it for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. So what would you explain as what are your top priorities for, well, actually, could you rank those last three that you just said? So which ones are most important to you? Like if someone, if someone's going to look up a video you made of the water they're drinking, which ones are your highest priority and which ones are like, yeah, you could probably get away with this one?
So my number one is definitely the antioxidant test.
Yeah.
That very first test. If you see any of my videos, that I say it all the time. This is the most important test out of the three, and it's because it directly affects your aging.
Right.
It directly affects your dis-ease, right, or lack of dis-ease that could happen, right. The second one would probably be, to be honest, I would say the third one, the teabag test.
Yeah.
I want a water that's actually going to be able to hydrate me at a cellular level. Okay. And then last but not least is the alkalinity. But the cool thing about that is when you get the first one right, it's a byproduct of the first one that actually happened. So you don't even really got to worry about that. So I know a lot of people, there's like, oh my gosh, what's the pH of this? What's the pH of that? And I make those videos too, but I also let them know that you don't really that's not the most important thing, especially if it's happening chemically, right? That's definitely not the way you want to go.
I am sort of surprised that I haven't found any bottled water yet that is electrolyzed, even if they don't care about the pH. But molecular hydrogen is the byproduct of ionization and electrolysis. So that's the antioxidant component that we're talking about. But I'm surprised that there aren't any bottled water companies that I've come across that are even trying to bottle electrolytes. They are?
Kind of. So being someone who tests a different water every week, people challenge me. They're always like, yeah, we'll try this one, right? So I had different companies actually reach out and get me to test their waters. So I've tested just about every kind. Hydrogen water is what's hot right now.
Right.
So the cool thing about that is it does show a negative ORP for the antioxidant test. But then the water that they're using to maintain that and keep it stabilized is a reverse osmosis. It's a distilled, it's something like that. So it ends up not doing the T-test. The water is bloated. Right. So it doesn't really, it doesn't go down well. And then it's acidic. Right. There's people who go very heavy on alkalinity. So I think that one is called, I think it was called 10 water, 10 pH water.
Yeah. There's some that are like 10 plus. And I was like, I wonder what these are scoring. Yeah.
And then I got people right now who are asking me to test hydrogen bottles, like H2 bottles.
I'm getting blasted with ads for all of the new hydrogen bottles, and they have the fancy LED and you can see the bubbles coming up. And I will message them and be like, okay, I know what tech you guys are using. What water are you using? And most people are pouring bottled water into this. And I was like, this isn't doing anything.
So two things with that. One, it does depend on the quality of the water that you have. But second is, well, three things actually. The plate that they're using.
That scares me.
You want to ensure that it is medical grade, not just something we randomly, not a mix of alloys put together. So what ends up happening is those start to rust, they get bad, and people start to get sick.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing is when we actually split the water, the acidic stuff goes away and you're drinking the alkaline. Right. When you're doing it in that bottle, they're both staying at how do you get rid of the acidic?
So I think they're using a combination of solid polymer electrolysis and there's another tech. It's not basic electrolysis. So they're creating hydrogen in a slightly different way without creating a different stream, but there's still a waste, right? You're still generating electrons. So I don't know where that's going. And that's the concerning part. The medical grade is 100% the most concerning for me too, because that's why most people who end up with our ionizers because they're the only ones that have the medical grade plates. There might be one other one in the US, but it's the risk of corrosion whenever you're trying to improve your health, right? Why would you even bother with the potential risk of corrosion and giving yourself like metal poisoning. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't think people want to go that far down. There's too much information, right? If you're even playing around with electrolysis, just there's a lot of new data that you're taking in, and you don't want to have to go to the bottom of like metal corrosion from what happens 10 years down the road. Yeah, what happens if I don't maintain this thing 10 years down the road, right? That's why the warranties usually cap out somewhere at 3 to 5 years, because companies are like, we have no idea how these people are going to use these, and we're not using medical grades, so we are not responsible for anything after like 3 years.
How do you even clean that as well? Like, how do you
Right.
go about maintaining and keeping it clean? Because even if it did do electrolysis the right way, calcium is going to build up on those plates. So either it's not going to work as well as it was, it's going to either rust, or it's essentially not going to do anything. You're just going to be, which I've jumped in different groups, Facebook groups, and people get theirs and they're like, hey, I don't see the bubbles. What's going on, right? So it's funny.
Well, when you learn how molecular hydrogen to neutral hydrogen atoms attached is created, you're like, oh, this is more complex than just like, you'll see I get a kick out of all the YouTube videos of people just like bashing electrolysis and ionization. They're like, just stick an anode and cathode in water, and that's electrolysis. And all these fancy machines are just doing that. And you're like, yeah, not quite. So it's right. You're going to get higher molecular hydrogen content, higher antioxidant content with more minerals in the water. So the ideal, like I went from city water in Asheville, which is pretty mineral depleted, and I had to add extra calcium, the mineral additive, calcium lactate, to get my ORP, so the antioxidant potential, anywhere around like even negative 250 to negative 500. Now I'm on a well, plenty of minerals, and it's up at negative 850.
Wow.
After I clean it just from the source water, right? So when people are like, what's the best water? You're like, it's not a one thing. Like, it depends what you're starting with, right? So there is a more ideal scenario, which is you always want the minerals there, but there's so many nuances to water, and people are usually overwhelmed enough just thinking about nutrition and like clean eating. And then you're like, now think about your water. So that's why we're here, is there has already been so much. Well, that's why we're pointing out the NSF and easy ways for you to go look it up, and just to not have to look at marketing garbage, right?
Know that it's marketing, that you're being marketed too. And it's really tough. But the sooner we realize that the world that we're living in, like most of it is blasted at you, but you got to look at the facts. And that's the main thing. You got to get away from that and look at the facts. So I wouldn't even, I tell my audience all the time, don't trust me. Go look it up. Look and see. Like, because I'm sharing with you too, this could be looked at as a form of advertising or marketing, but you just have to go look up and see for yourself. So if you see something different, then I'm just here to support along this journey, right? So
the thing I so appreciate about you is just your wealth of resources. Like, we're in a massive water group, a water nerd group, and they're like we're describing, if someone's listening to this and they're just starting to tiptoe into the water world, there is so much, right? So it's taken me a year just to wrap my head around everything and begin to organize anything. And now I'm building out courses, but you've already done a whole lot of the organizational research around like amateur plumbing, and basically putting water comes with plumbing. So how do you actually do this? Like, getting over the hurdles of that hit people, the barriers to actually getting clean water, like how to actually install it in your house, or considerations, or maintain it, all the things that no one really wants to think about, which is why they buy bottled water, probably. So I really appreciate all your resources. What do you think was the most impactful in your journey, learning and organizing everything? Like, if someone was going to start someplace they understand that their tap water may be not the best, and they see the stuff in their water from Tap Water Report, what's the most important thing you think of sort of getting a baseline for clean water or for health?
That's a tough question. That's good. Man, because I thought you were going a different way with it. Let me see. So the main thing is, I would say, to connect with us. That's the first thing, is to start asking questions like, hey, why is this in my tap water? And what can I do to remove it? We kind of shared a lot of the resources before of ewg.org. We shared the NSF, and to get around communities who are thinking about this stuff. Not necessarily trying to sell you on a specific thing, but are there to really genuinely answer your question. And then from there, you can kind of go with that trust. As far as how to go about making the changes, you just have to take bold action. For me, that's what I did. Like the reason why I know all these things was because I just made a ton of mistakes. I had a house. I was the one, it was under my name. So I learned how to do all these different configurations. And even part of the demos I was doing before I stuck to doing them at home, I went to other people's houses and I found out, oh, this is what they have. How do I set this up? How do I make this work? Right. And it's literally happening in real time. And there's times where I had to set things up on someone's water hose, like outside. There's times where I had to get creative and connect it to their bathroom and just other things like that. And then after that happens, it's okay, cool. What did I learn? And what can I do to improve this process the next time? That's what happened. If you don't do that part, because it's going to be crazy, it's going to be wild. But if you don't do that part, you're not going to get better. You're not going to learn. And then the client sees that you're human, right? They see that. And they also see that you're still, despite whatever challenge you're going through, that you're still there to help serve them, that you're still looking at the answer. And people just really want to work with people that they ultimately know, like, and trust.
Yeah, perfectly said. We're coming up on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. Was there anything that part of your story that we didn't cover, or anything big about the water world that you want to focus a little more attention on?
So I know that there's different layers to this. There's levels, as with everything. But I'm gonna share with you that your body is 70 to 75% water. So if we address that, we have a better chance of addressing 70 to 75% of the challenges that we're dealing with when it comes to our health. All right. And there are levels to this. So if you end up seeing what Alex has or see what I have, and you maybe can't get the ionizer and the filter, then just start where you can. Right. So start with the filter. And I have plenty of people who start with just getting filtered water. They wait a little bit of time and then they upgrade to having the ionizer with it. Don't feel that you have to get everything at once. Do not let that be the reason why you don't start making changes towards your health. The average family spends $1,800 a year on bottled water. And this is going to save you money, save you time, help the environment, and then improve your health to where you can start moving up, not only in just your water, but your mental aspect, physical aspect, social aspect, spiritual aspect, and it can help all the way around. So I would say those are the main things. If you have questions or concerns, please reach out to one of us. There's tons of books on this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to right now, but if you just want to read or learn or gather that knowledge, we're both here for you.
And where can people follow or learn from you? What are your handles?
So my YouTube channel is LaPrentiss Demond. We'll probably type that out somewhere.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
I'm slowly building an Instagram, but my primary place is YouTube right now. It's LaPrentiss Demond, and then my website. I have a personal website. So if you're interested in learning about the waters, I have a masterclass that is the homepage. It's at LaPrentissDemond.com. Perfect.
Simple, easy to go. I really appreciate that download. It's always nice chatting with a fellow water nerd and learning your story. That was huge. I'm going to share that because I got it for farming reasons, and then the health came later. I am always inspired by the people who get it and their huge health problems go away so quickly, right? I mean, nothing moves that quickly. It's like 4 days to a week is ridiculous. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I might have you back on so we can nerd out some more.
Yeah, awesome. It was a pleasure chatting with you, Alex. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you brought me on this podcast. And I look forward to chatting with you some more.
Likewise. See ya. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast, everyone. I always learn something when I talk to LaPrentiss. We dropped a ton of resources in there. So I'll put all of the different websites and how you can test your water and what LaPrentiss looks for when he does his tests, as well as his full library of video tests, as well as my own and the Appalachian Water Collectives, all below this. For the central point, if you just want to start somewhere with your water, you can either visit AppalachianWaterCollective.com, which will be below, and then we have tons of resources on hydrogen water, what to look for, again, what to look for filtration and NSF certifications. And LaPrentiss has his full video library on YouTube. Everything will be in the show notes. Please let us know if we can be any help. Wherever you are in the world, clean water is the foundation of your health.